Welcome to the AmeriFirst AmeriTrust Speaker Series. My name is Craig Olmstead, and I'll be your host for today's event. We have a special opportunity to add a second show this month to interview one of the premier sales and high trust coaches in the country. Please check out our landing page and register to find out about our upcoming speakers at AmeriFirstSpeakerSeries.com or AmeriTrustSpeakerSeries.com. We're using the Zoom platform and encourage your questions throughout the program. Please type in your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a cell phone and would like to ask a question, send an email to consideritdone@amerifirst.com, and we'll try to get those answered for you. We're privileged today to have Todd Duncan with us. Todd joined us in March for our Hour of Power, and he was kind enough to come back for our speaker series. Todd is a sales entrepreneur with over 5 million students around the globe that he has mentored and taught in mortgage, real estate, banking, and financial services. Todd started as a real estate broker and loan originator, negotiating and financing over 5,000 transactions in 12 years. He then launched the High Trust Company with the vision of transforming how sales professionals build high-performing practices. Todd teaches the value of high trust in everything you do, including your trusting yourself, your relationships, your faith, and your future. When you do that, you set in motion a universe of possibilities. He's the author of 17 books, and for a few of our viewers today that asked Todd a question, we have some autographed copies of his #1 New York Times bestseller. So get those questions ready. Today's panelists asking Todd questions are Ron Burgum, President of the Southwest Division, Mark Jones, President of AmeriFirst, Dave Game, CEO of AmeriFirst, and Doug Long, President of the Southeast Division. Todd, thank you so much for being with us today, and Ron, I'll let you get started with the first question.
Thanks, Craig, and welcome to all of our viewers today and partners and loan officers and others that joined in to listen to this incredible opportunity to talk to someone that's been in this business as a thought expert and leader in industry for 35 years. That's Todd Duncan. So Todd, I'm in his office. I'm in a different room, but I'm actually sitting at his desk, and I got to tell you, it feels pretty powerful sitting at Todd's desk. I'm only 5'9", Todd's 6'5", but I feel 6'7" right now. It's great. It's awesome. So I appreciate, I want to start off, first of all, Todd, by thanking you for joining the team here today and give us and lend us your mind and lend us your expertise and your great advice. So let's start off with the fact that you've been speaking in this business and industry for over 30 years. And in those 30 years, I've got this thought last night as I'm thinking about how many questions we've talked about and things we've worked through over the years. And I'm thinking, what is the relevant big idea, the one big idea that you're talking about to people today to hammer out gains in their business, to affect changes for them to do what they want to do, to get where they want to go, to achieve their goals? What is the big idea?
Yeah. So Ron, thanks. And thanks everybody for letting me be on the speaker series. It's a joy to hang out with you guys for an hour. The big idea is really a small idea, but when you take this small idea and you get really, really clear on it, it is where all the gains come from. And the simple answer is you get the biggest gains by being purposeful and intentional about what you do. We have found tens of thousands of people in this business every single year through our diagnostics that are not purposeful and intentional. In fact, one of the stats that we have, Ron, is for realtors and for lenders. There's approximately 18 on the low side and about 24 on the high side hours per week spent in activity that is not intentional and not purposeful. We think back to Steve Jobs. We think back to the great leadership at Apple, and Steve deployed what he called the rule of 3. And I think as agents and lenders, loan originators, we have to look at the rule of 3, right? The rule of 3 for an LO is you should be spending most of your time with borrower consultations, agent development, and creating operational brilliance on every single consumer experience. If I'm a real estate agent, I should be spending most of my time in prospecting, negotiating, and listing presentations. If I can start to orient my life around the rule of 3, and I can be more intentional and purposeful about how I use the gift of time to deploy that in these 3 areas of focus, I can see a 3, 4, 5x on my value and my volume within a period of somewhere short side 6 months, long side maybe 12 months. So the big idea is, let's get really purposeful. Why am I doing this? Let's get really intentional. Am I doing this on purpose? And if we do those 2 things, I think we start to see some real gains. Too many people allow the universe to control what they do with their time every day instead of taking charge of their time and controlling the outcomes they're looking for.
Todd, I want to make sure, I want to repeat what you just said because it hit me hard. So you actually said both for originators, and we have a lot of real estate agents also on this call today. So you actually gave them three things for both. So consultation for loan officers, consulting with potential customers, agent partnership development. And the third thing was making your loans get through quickly, operational excellence.
Operational brilliance, operational excellence. Yeah.
Brilliance. Okay. And then for the agent, you said prospecting, number one, two, negotiating deals, and number three, listing presentations. Did I get it?
That's it. Those are the six. Those six will make, yeah, that's it.
And it's an X. It's a 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X, but it's an X, big time.
So you look at the idea of what is your X factor, and there's only so much time any human being has in the day. So the X factor is not about how many hours you work. The X factor is about what do you do in the hours that you have to create the highest impact with the time that you've been gifted. You know, we're giving lifeblood to this business. We're giving our heart and soul and the free gift of time that we've been endowed by our creator. And at the end of the day, man, if you're not taking control and you are not initiating intentional and purposeful initiatives, and fewer is better than many, you're going to work 2, 3, 4 times as long versus getting your results 2, 3, or 4 times as fast.
What an amazing opening thought. We could almost end the whole thing right here and we'd be done with just what we got there. Todd, thanks for being with us. We go back a long time, and I really appreciate you being here. I'm not going to admit to how long it actually is because that would age both of us. But when we were doing our prep call the other day, you mentioned a story that blew us away about a loan officer and a real estate agent. You mentioned the key to any relationship is the questions you ask. Would you mind repeating that story and letting us know how our team and the real estate partners on the phone can execute this kind of strategy immediately?
Yeah, sure, Mark. You know, I think at the end of the day, what we've got to understand, and this is really for, you know, not only the originator listening to this that's going to be engaging with borrowers and realtor partners, it's for the agents that are on this call that are going to be engaging with buyers and sellers. And one of the things I wrote down about 3 weeks ago in my office is I wrote down, you've got to ask the questions you've never asked so you can learn the things you've never learned, so you can solve the things you've never solved. And I believe at the very, very heart of high trust is the depth of the questions that you ask. There's no more emotionally motivating tool or strategy available to the human being than there is asking questions they've never asked to learn things they've never learned so they can add value and solve where they've never solved. So we were talking with a loan originator that has been working with a real estate agent for 12 years, you know, has a really good relationship with this agent, super consistent business. The agent trusts this originator, you know, all the deals that she can move towards this originator, she does. They're good friends, you know, knowing each other for over a decade. And in one of the personal coaching sessions we had with him, we talked about that same thing. Have you ever asked your agents the questions you've never asked them? Do you really know what's important to them? And do you really know how to come alongside them and deliver value beyond what the rest of your competitors are trying to deliver, right? And so he as an action plan, decided to go out and have a sit down with this agent. And it went something like this. You know, Janice, I've been working with you for 12 years. I've valued our business for as long as we've been working together. We've helped hundreds of families finance real estate. But it dawns on me that I have never asked you a question that I need to ask you. Tell me why being a real estate agent right now for you is important to you. And she answered the question by saying 800,000. And this originator said, 800,000, what do you mean by that? And she said, 800,000. That's how much more money I need to make every single year for the next 3 years as part of my business plan. And this originator said, so why 800,000? She said, I want to be able to be in a position in 36 months to pay cash for a piece of land and build a home free and clear for my husband at his favorite lake, so that if I predecease him, he'll never have to worry about his dream coming true. And that's what's most important to me. And as this guy's telling me the story, he's telling me that Janice is tearing up as she's sharing this idea that I want to make $800,000 more a year, because if I can have an extra couple of $1 million, I can buy that lakefront piece of land. I can build the cabin of his dreams, and I can know that for the rest of his life, he's going to have the joy and the fulfillment and the happiness that I know this lake brings to him. It had nothing to do with turn times. It had nothing to do with interest rates. It had nothing to do with service. It had nothing to do except with the human condition of the heart saying, this is why something's important to me. And so now he starts every conversation off by saying, how are we doing in the 800,000 category? And all strategy is now being developed around how do we make you an extra $800,000 a year? It's a powerful, powerful testimony to how reminded we need to be that people do business for reasons, and most of us don't know those reasons. And if we knew the reasons, we'd have a deeper, more connected relationship. So it's super powerful. When the guy was telling us a story, he was crying. Most of the time when originators start asking different questions that are deeper questions, they start realizing, I don't know anything about this person that I'm actually calling a partner. So thanks, Mark, for asking that. It was super, super revealing to me on how important questions are.
It's super deep too. Thanks for sharing that story with us again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That when you get it to the emotional level where you're really beyond the relationship, the way we most take it, you start to develop a bond that you just can't replace. So unbelievable story. Thanks for sharing that. You know, in the same call, you struck me with another statement that you said, and it was profound, but it needs some explanation. I think today, talking to our guys, it would be good to repeat that as well. And what you said is that loan officers' memories are very short. As well, their habits are not very good. Tell us what you meant by that. Restate that and explain it to us.
Well, I think, thanks, Dave. I think everybody needs to be really honest with themselves. You know, one of the things that we know in performance, and, you know, especially as we have this speaker series conversation, I'll use the word high performance. The bottom line is that we forget markets, right? And the market is good right now. The market was tough in January, February, March. We've had seasons that have been hard seasons. We've had seasons that have been easy seasons. And, you know, when the business is easy in terms of rates being low and interest being high and all that comes along with that, I'm sure I don't need to explain that any further, given where we are right now in the industry. We forget hard times. We forget times of normalcy. We forget the disciplines that go along with running a business, no matter what the market is doing or not doing. And what ends up happening in easier markets in terms of volume is that our skills, which probably weren't at level 10 anyway before the market got easier, are further depleted in terms of our sharpness and how good we are at them. And, you know, whether somebody's been doing loans for 30 years or 3 years, you know, the number one objective is to make sure, using that rule of 3 we started with, that you get really, really good at the fewer and fewer things that make the greatest impact to the business. We talk about this idea of I've got to, as a leader, I have to, as an originator, I have to have a high belief in my skill sets. I have to be at level 10. I've got to be introspective and honest about how good am I today in negotiating? How good am I today in adding value? How good am I today in asking the right kind of questions? How good am I today at conversion? How good am I today? And whatever those skills are, it's very important for people to understand that if you're not at a level of competence in a skill, you will not be consistent in deploying that skill. So that's why so many loan originators and real estate agents have up and down months, because, you know, we fill the pipeline up, we bring the business in, and then we clear it out, and then we bring it in again. And at the end of the day, it would be awesome for people to just say, I've got to get really good at these 3 things. I've got to get my deployment, my competence level to mastery, which is why I invented sales mastery. The whole idea of, if you're really, really good at something, you're not going to have any fear in executing it. You're not going to have any distorted, you know, interruptions to using your time differently and saying, I don't have time to go do that. Where in fact, what you're actually saying is, I'm not good at it, so I don't want to risk the fear and feel the potential frustration of doing something I'm not good at. There are originators that 30 years after they started are still not great at the high trust interview. They're still not great at managing their time. They're still not great at ordering a systematic approach to operational excellence and delegation. So, memories are short and habits are bad is something critical. Anybody that wants to be super good in this business has to understand, get really, really good at like one or two things. And that sounds awfully easy to say, but if I'm not at level 10 in my buyer consultation, if I'm not at level 10 in the depth of the interviews I have with my agents, as an agent, if I'm speaking too much at a listing presentation, I don't have the right skill to pull a seller in. I've got to be able to understand the skill sets of influence and the skill sets of productivity. Most loan officers show up every day and they get through the day. And as a result of that, they don't have as fulfilling and purposeful of an experience on the job. So, and by the way, as technology continues to come on, everybody's going to be evaluated by how good are they at the human stuff. I mean, the knowledge base and the human connection is going to be the lifeline. It's going to be the safety net of any mortgage banker as we proceed down the path of watching what technology does and watching shifting tides. So that, I guess, is the long answer to a pretty easy question.
That's a great answer. Hello, my friend. You and I have been doing business together for 25 plus years. And
unbelievable.
Great disciple of what you do, what you teach, and it's just incredible the mastery of what you've put together. And I know a lot of the callers, listeners we have on the line today are real estate agents, and I know you coach a lot of other people in other businesses other than mortgage banking. So, for the real estate agent, what would you say is the number one obstacle facing the realtor client today?
Yeah, so this is near and dear to my heart. I just spoke to 4,000 real estate agents in the Gold Coast in Australia, and I was talking about, the threats of the future. And I said to them, I said, the market that you find yourself in and the volume that you find yourself doing has everything to do with the value you create in that market. And so I think the thing that, from my vantage point, that agents need to pay really, really close attention to is the idea of value creation and the idea of what am I doing beyond whatever anybody else is doing, what any other firm might be doing, what any other technology might be doing. What am I doing to create real value creation for my consumers, my sellers, and my buyers? And I think the answer to at least in this short time that we have together, it is to understand that most agents are one-dimensional thinkers. And what that means is they think about selling a home or they think about showing a home. And that's the dimension in which they play. What I think is the threat to real estate is if you don't go beyond that single dimension, technology will have a way of edging you out. And I think it's already starting to play out. We're already starting to see the different kinds of disruptions that are taking place in the agent world. I saw something, recently about the threat of the iBuyer and how many billions of dollars were at stake, for real estate agents because of technology. And yet at the end of the day, talking with high performance agents, they don't fear this at all. They fear only that they need to keep creating value because of what they charge. The iBuyer transaction or all the different direct offers and all of that may or may not be in the best interest of a consumer. But if I don't know that and I haven't asked the right kind of questions and I'm not getting beyond the dimension of buying and selling and getting into a deeper dimension of long-term thinking, long-term real estate planning, long-term advisement, long-term investing, then technology is going to have a way of edging me out a little bit. So what we're talking to agents about is we're talking about relooking at your marketing aggregation platform. What are you doing actually to go beyond the dimension of showing a home and then hopefully going into contract and selling that home? What are you doing to create an aggregation of potential buyers and sellers where it's way beyond that? It's more relational and long-term than it is single point of transaction. those are the things that we feel are really moving agents to a higher level of confidence in their future. And certainly as we tie, I think what the lender and the agent do together, it is a mandate. It's a mandate that we get beyond just the single dimension of we sell a home, we help somebody buy a home, we finance a home. It's got to go way beyond that, where we see the world today, in order for lenders to stand out, for agents to stand out. And beyond that, then it's using technology as the kind of the side rails, right? Not the main motivation, the main reason for access. So that's a big change, I think, just moving from one-dimensional to multi-dimensional.
That's a great first round. Thanks, guys, and thank you, Todd. Our marketing department, after this is over, will pull out some 30 and 45-second segments, and I'm real excited for the material they've already got here in the first 20 minutes. So thank you for that. I want to remind everybody that Ron's in Todd's office, and we'll have access to Todd's personalized autographs. So get some questions in the Q&A session, and let's get started with round two. Ron, take it away.
Thanks, Craig and Todd. So I'm thinking about this. I had a question I was going to ask. I'm going to pivot to a different question because it's making me think about it. You're talking about really technology being the leverage of labor right now. One of the key concepts. So, it's a threat. Technology is a threat unless you use it as leverage for labor. If you don't beat the technology will beat you, right? We know this. So you've talked about face-to-face interviews, face-to-face conversations, and you don't actually talk about it, you preach about it. What you preach about is you want to get a double, if you want to get a triple, and if you want to get that in a short order of 30, 60, 90, 120 days, you talk about face-to-face conversations. Expand on that for us. Expand about the power of the one-on-one conversation with everybody. Let's talk about that.
So, it's interesting as you think about high trust, as you think about personhood, as you think about deeper dimension, as you think about long-term relationship, everybody has to understand that at some point you have to be in the position to create the highest, deepest, and stickiest level of trust possible. And where most people miss this is they miss it at the most important part, which is the front end. And the front end of every relationship, whether it's a lender sitting down and meeting with a borrower, or whether it's a lender going out and sitting down and meeting with a real estate agent, or it's a real estate agent going to a seller's home and sitting down and meeting with that seller, everybody needs to understand that we are returning kind of to the past as a way to prep for the future. The face-to-face meeting, the face-to-face interview, particularly if it's the first time that you've ever transacted with that individual, is a mandate in a high-tech world. So we've engaged a company that's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. They study 28 countries around the world. We are studying as we look at high trust in America, Australia, Canada, the UK, as we watch different factions of industry facing distrust. Big 2-year investigation in Australia on broker distrust, and the world revolves on trust, and trust cannot be communicated over the telephone. It can't be communicated simply through an email. It can't be communicated, even in a Zoom call, we can see each other, but we don't feel the emotional face-to-face kind of beat, right, of the relationship. What we do know is it's interesting that when you have face-to-face meetings, you actually accelerate trust through emotional connection. And a lot of people think they don't have time for face-to-face meetings, or that buyers don't have time to come meet you face-to-face, which is just, all that is code for you don't know what to say, and you don't have the ability to create enough value in whatever you say to get them to understand. If they're going to drive 20 minutes across town to get their hair cut and spend $100, why wouldn't they drive 20 minutes across town to meet with you when it's going to involve thousands and thousands of dollars? So we've got to get to this mode, Ron, where we understand two things about face-to-face. Face-to-face increases conversion because it increases deep trust, high trust. And if we don't do face-to-face, we might still get the deal, but we won't have the level of deep trust. Now, we also have to understand that if we get face-to-face, we're able to create a different emotional bond, which settles down the expectation of how much people will pay for whatever it is we're charging. So the whole price pressure thing kind of abates. The whole idea of margin compression and concession pricing, that abates. I mean, whenever you get to face, people will pay more. The final reason why it's absolutely critical is based on the stats we're looking at, is it produces the highest customer sat score. You can look at an internet loan application. You can look at a phone application. You can look, yes, we have stats on mail out applications in the modern day world. You can look at face-to-face. Face-to-face has the lowest percentage of applications in terms of the method of how the application is done. Lowest percentage, only 8% of applications are conducted face-to-face. It has the highest customer sat score, knocking right on the door of 80%, which in the world of 5 stars is right under 4.5 stars. So why wouldn't we go face-to-face? Now, the important reason why face-to-face for an agent is critical is because that's when you can ask the questions that we were talking about earlier that Mark brought up. How can I ask the deeper questions? I can't even feel the emotional answer if I'm not face-to-face. My brother's a financial planner. He will not take you on as a client unless you agree to a 2-hour face-to-face meeting with him. You know, I've got a couple of physicians that as much as they'd love to do house calls, they're not going to do that. You're going to go to them because they are the expert. So I think mortgage guys and gals need to really understand, what's your intentional process? You know, are you going to let the buyer control the circumstances in which you guys help finance the most important decision of their life? Or are you going to, with value creation, control those circumstances? And I think far too many people are just, they're not getting the face-to-face. I mean, Entrepreneur Magazine said, if you want to 10x your volume, have more face-to-face meetings. That's about as simple as it gets.
Todd, you made me realize, and as you were speaking, is that one of the unintended consequences of technology is the weakening of the skill set for the personal conversation.
100%.
The face-to-face. So it's actually that technology has actually weakened that skill. And people like to hide behind technology. Let's face it, right? They'd rather text, they'd rather send an email than pick up the phone and either confront the issue, deal with the customer, good or bad, right? Because they can send a text or they can send an email. And that face-to-face interview, to me, to you, to us on the call, and everyone listening, it's number one. It's got to be number one.
It has to be number one. And pointing back to what you just said and what I said at the front end of the call is, if you're not good at a skill set, you will hide behind whatever eliminates the need for that skill set to be at level 10. And what I would say to the world at large, but specifically what I would say to, AmeriFirst and the ecosystem that you guys are serving is, there's so much value in face-to-face. I did a Facebook post and I said, what's the value of face-to-face meetings with borrowers? And you wouldn't be blown away. Faster conversion, deeper relationship, more referrals, less price pressure. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And from my vantage point, as we get into the future of what this business looks like, if you don't have those types of deep relationships with buyers that are influencers in the marketplace for you, if you don't have those deep relationships with real estate agents that are influential in the marketplace for you, you will be scratching the surface as to what you're able to get. I mean, case in point is, an agent could be working with 10 buyers in a given month, and maybe 7 or 8 of those might know another lender. They may already be approved somewhere. And maybe you end up talking to the 2 that aren't approved or don't know a lender. Well, real depth, real value creation, real relationship says you talk to all 10. And you think about that, you could actually 4x the number of buyers you talk to if you have a deeper, different kind of face-to-face meeting with a real estate agent to get strategic. Same thing with the real estate agents. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating, Ron. And people hide behind it. They're afraid of it. And yet it's the number one thing we can do in the high trust world to create a relationship. I could go on and on face-to-face.
Yeah, and I would say if you do hide behind it, you're going to get disrupted. I mean, that's what they're out for. So, listen, along the same lines, when we were again doing the prep call, you really piqued our attention. You said the key to the future is human connection. You use words like humanize, deepen, and connect emotionally. First, why did you say that? And second, how do you think we should do that as real estate professionals and mortgage professionals?
Yeah, you know, I think at the end of the day, and I'm just gonna, you know, I'll just get as vulnerable as I can get right now. I think most of us are superficial in the relationships that we have. And what I mean by that is not that we wake up intending to be superficial people. But I think that because of some of the other questions that you guys asked and really some of the dialogue points that we know don't take place, people are not able to experience deeper, real connection. I think there's far too much promotion, there's too much ego, there's too much bragging about who we are, what we do, how long we've done it, you know, how good we are. None of those are bad things. I mean, you need to be accountable and reliable and bankable as a company and as a human being. But I think at the end of the day, what I become clearer and clearer on, Mark and everybody, as we talk through this, is most of us don't have deep relationship. We're on the surface, and we can make a living being on the surface, but we can make a fortune when we go deep and connect. So when we talk about humanize and we talk about connection, and when we talk about just the emotional heartbeat of relationship, what we're talking about is being real. What we're talking about is having a level of connection that is unpenetrable. In other words, when we come alongside somebody and ask them questions that allow us to really understand what's important to them and why it's important to them, and you know what they want to do and how they want to do it and why they want to do it, and we pepper questions in like, how can I help you win? How can I help you and your family design the best home ownership experience possible? How can I every year come alongside you and add value to whatever it is that you need to do in your family and with your real estate? And I start to get deeper in those questions. We all know this. We all know that when you see that particular emotional connection that comes through the eyes, there's nothing that can replace that. And it's interesting if we look at the optics of emotional connection, and I think everybody would appreciate this, you know, given the fact that we're in business. What Gallup says about emotional connection is that when you have it, you can improve margins, top line margins, by 26%. So our motive is not to get emotionally connected because we want to make more money. What we want to understand is that when you're not emotionally connected, you do business financially at a compressed level or a concession. When we look at emotional connection, and this is the big part of the future for agents and for lenders, when we look at emotional connection and it's strong, then we have people that want to be our ambassadors. We have buyers that want to go out of their way to help us find more buyers because of the level of trust that we've created as a mortgage professional by not being on the surface and going deeper. And so when we talk about the idea of getting a loan and having a customer, that's kind of tactical, right? The more strategic thing to think about is I want to get a customer because I want to help them with a loan. I don't want the loan to create the customer. I want the customer to create the loan. And then I want to take that customer because of emotional connection and serve them in ways that I don't serve right now, which is, you know, how do I get into their ecosystems? How do I influence their employee base? How do I add value to their company? How do I go beyond that in their friendship circles and so on and so forth? If there's no emotional connection and humanization, there is no referability, there is no loyalty, there is no continuity, and we end up as an industry one and done. And I got a guy right now that in the last 12 months has generated 172 buyer transactions out of one relationship that he had with one guy that runs a manufacturing plant for Hyundai, because he went deep with the guy that runs the plant, and they opened up the plant to him being able to add financial advice and connection to an employee base of over 1,700 people. And he'll tell you straight up, man, my first interview with that buyer was 2 hours long. And, you know, I think we try to pride ourselves on how fast can we get it done. Well, let me pose a different question. Does speed really matter if you don't end up with a permanent relationship that has high influence? And what would happen if you slowed it down? So I think that's, I mean, my general impression is most of us are trying to do it way too fast.
And my general impression is that is really powerful stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, Todd, that amazing. You know, and I hope our folks are listening. Our wheelhouse is about relationship. We tout that. That's who we are. But yet, I've heard what you just said. I've heard originators talk pridefully about how fast they've gotten the application down, how short of a time that they can get it done, and that is counter to what we should be doing. We should be, as you said, that's our opportunity to drive the relationship to the point where instead of technology being the great disruptor to us with the iBuyer and et cetera, we're going to be, personal relationship should be the great disruptor to technology. That's the Achilles heels of technology. So
Yeah,
unbelievable.
100%.
And as I think about who's on the call here, we've got our realtor partners along with our originators. Give us some advice that you have to help these folks understand and visualize what the future relationship of the loan originator and our realtor partner is going to look like. What's coming?
So the first thing that comes to mind, Dave, is collaboration. And, you know, I think one of the things that I always admired about Ron Burgum was early on when we did an interview with him. He was absolutely one of the early kind of passionate implementers around agent partnerships, right? And I think far too often, if we look at partnerships today, they're not partnerships. They're never going to be a partnership in the legal sense, but they're not even an emotional human partnership, right? We do not collaborate like we need to collaborate. We don't help agents win. Agents don't sit down with us and figure out how to help us win. And the future of the lender-agent relationship is a relationship of deep, deep, high trust with a mutual purpose, full of collaboration, weekly, maybe twice a month minimally. And it's about how do we help each other win. This whole idea of partnership planning has pre-existed the need for almost 20 years. And today it's mandatory. So what we see happening is we see collaboration. I'll give you one example of collaboration. So there's a real estate agent and an originator that are working together, and the real estate agent and the originator have this kind of a decision that they've made where we're actually looking to every buyer and seller to become not only a loyalist and ambassador, but by being an introducer to new social circles. And I think this is part of how agents are going to avoid technological disruption. I think that this is how they're going to avoid some of the iBuyer stuff. They're going to be part. I mean, if you really think about it, in most towns in America, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people. So collaboration is, how do we take every buyer and how do we take every seller and how do we create a firestorm of introduced relationship through the mutuality of who people know. And we can take it all the way to point of sale. You know, if I'm a loan rep and I'm sitting down with a buyer, most of us think that buyer and that loan is a transaction. There's a certain amount of commission that comes with it. Most of us don't really look that person could be the absolute gateway, a gateway to, you know, hundreds or thousands of more people. And so armed with that, this originator that we've been coaching for about 7 months ends up getting a buyer that he has a conversation with, and the buyer knows a person that had asked him about 3 weeks earlier about mortgage finance. They sync each other up. The guy that gets synced up and referred is actually one of the head administrators for an association called CMA, and CMA is the California Medical Association. The California Medical Association has 44,000 physicians and nurses and nurse practitioners. So the collaboration of how do we take every buyer, and how do I as a lender, how do you as an agent create this kind of vortex where we're not even going to worry about Zillow. We're not even going to worry about all this other stuff. We're not going to be there as a recipient of, all these cold and uniquely difficult leads that may or may not ever convert, because we're going to be over here in this ecosystem that we're going to own. So somewhere in between the technological wave that's happening and the relational truth that most people don't own like they need to own is this idea of how does an agent and a lender come together to create a collaboration around market presence, around not even lead gen. The relationship of the future is going to be about referral gen, not lead gen, referral gen. And when you can do that, agents have higher conversion. I mean, I don't have to show as many properties if I'm plugged into that kind of system. I don't have to show properties, 10 properties to one person. I can show 2 or 3 because we have a deeper connected relationship. We know what's going on. So that to me is the future. The future is going to be collaboration, and it is going to be joint ambassadorship of agent and lender brands to the point that we get into businesses that nobody's in right now.
Referral gen. Love that one. I got a new one there, Todd. Thank you. That's awesome. Hey, talks about technology disruptors, but I've heard you talk about all the time the biggest disruptor today is trust. Can you unpack that and tell us what that means, and how do we go? How does that work? How does trust the biggest disruptor in business?
Is the number one thing that people want in relationship. And all the promotion in the world, all the marketing in the world, all the newsletters in the world, all the email in the world, all of that is for naught if there's not trust. And trust is something that is hard to get, Doug. It is crucial to hang on to. And we must understand that at the end of the day, everything rises and falls on trust. If I, as a business disruptor, can create the most and honest and deepest levels of trust by much of what we've talked about on this interview today, asking different questions, having different relationship dynamics around vulnerability and humanization and all those things. If people don't trust us, they will not say yes. They will not do business. They will not be advocates or ambassadors. And I think at the end of the day, when you stop to think about what really does trust do, trust makes people feel calm, comfortable, and confident. And our job as a lender and as a real estate agent and as somebody running a business, our job is to make people feel calm, comfortable, and confident. And you can't, if you don't have trust, people don't feel that. And so you have lower pull through, you have lower conversion, you don't have anywhere near the referability post closing. And trust cannot be something that you just slap on. You gotta earn it. And so today in the world of reviews and in the world of referrals, I mean, one of the great tests for trust is when a borrower conversation and you are done. You look at the borrower and you say, do you trust where we're going? Do you trust the process that we've talked about? Have we earned your trust? Those are the kind of questions that aren't being asked today because most are not ready for the answers. And, you have performance trust, you have pricing trust, you have relational trust, you have economic trust, you have emotional trust. I mean, everything rises and falls on trust. And all it takes is one break in trust to break an entire business conduit. And that's how important it is, Doug. I mean, it's just like, and the fact of the matter is you can't just market it. You can't just say, we're trustworthy. It's not, you can't market trust. Trust is this. Trust is the individual experience. And, you know, I think it gets back to everything we talked about, the questions you ask, the purpose you have, the intentionalness of your dialogues. It's really, really worth unveiling and really looking at as an individual. How good am I at it?
And the thing about trust is that you build it drip by drip, but you lose it in bucket loads.
Yeah. So you got to be vigilant. You know, you got to be vigilant, Mark. You can't. And I think, you know, here's the interesting thing. I know that AmeriFirst, AmeriTrust, I know you guys have a seasoned origination population. That's great. You know, most real estate agents in America, I think the chronological average age for an agent in America is 54 or 55. We've all been at it a long time, but all it takes is one miscue or one mistake, and you can lose an entire business. You know, I mean, literally. And so one of the things that's important is that people understand they've got to guard this. They really have to guard and own the promises they make. Are the promises legit? I mean, can you stand behind what you say? You know, if you tell somebody, and it can get as simple as this, you tell somebody you'll call them back in 5 minutes and you call them back in 15. You may not know it, but you broke trust. You had an expectation, you promised a result, and you didn't deliver on it. Now, I know that feels like awfully simple, but it is. You have a series of 10 or 15 little things like that, and pretty soon somebody doesn't trust you.
Well, I think we're going to need Mark and Dave's approval for overtime on the marketing department. We got an awful lot of clips to pull out of today's segment. Thank you again, Todd. Got a few questions here from the audience. Susan is asking, the division I work is based on primarily telephone contact because we do distance lending. Are there any suggestions on how to deepen relationships when we're not able to meet face-to-face? Phone, email, text is being used. What about Zoom meetings or bomb videos?
Yeah, so I think the ultimate goal is human heat, emotion, face to face, and that's the ultimate goal. Now, if we can't do that because of Susan's question and being in phone sales or being part of a type of call center, all of that, then the drop down is anything that still is face to face. So this could be face to face, what we're doing right now. I can use Zoom, I can use Adobe Connect, I can use FaceTime, I can use Google Hangout. I mean, there's 4 or 5 technology platforms where if we can't meet face-to-face, this is the next best answer. To video, what I would say is that embedded video, bomb, using video as a communicator in your email is going to create more trust than email alone. It also increases the open rate. And so if we are using some level of emotional connection, which is, in this case, allowing people to see each other, hear each other, feel each other, and then, marrying that and kind of marinating that with video, we can still create a great user experience. And so I would say that is the most obvious way that we drop down. We have several different people that Deb and I engage in business, and one of which is in Boston. And when we can't get to Boston to have the kind of meetings we need to have with this person, we will do something like this. And so I'm okay with that. I think most people default to not doing the ultimate face-to-face, not because of the business model, but because they don't see the value in it and they don't feel comfortable in how to win get through the objections and win the face-to-face. But in all means, Susan, I would say if you're on the telephone, let's drop it to video interactive like this.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
Linda asks, how do we get current realtor relationships that we work with energized into referring us to use other realtors in their office?
So the answer is pretty straightforward. The first thing I want to say to everybody is make sure the relationships you have already are at 100%. make sure that if I'm working with Betty in an office of 50 agents, let's make sure that is at 100%. Because I think far too often what we end up doing as lenders is we end up trying to think that the way to get more business is to get more people referring business to us. When in fact, it is the opposite. The opposite way to get more business is to have so much brand value with a few of the right people that it becomes visibly attractive to everybody else there. I'd rather have somebody in a real estate office, say to Betty, this deal you got going with this guy named Ron, I mean, it seems exceptional. I've watched you guys work together the last couple of months. Could you give me Ron's contact information so I could contact him? That's one of the best ways to kind of reverse engineer the referral. Now, if I'm in an office, if I have an agent in an office and I want that agent to kind of be a matchmaker for me, I can ask questions like, so what other agents in your office do you know that trust you, that aren't having a great lender experience, that I could contact using your name? So if I do that and I use that as kind of a soft referral, kind of that process, I can do that. The mistake most people make is they don't understand the value of deepening relationship with fewer people. I mean, I could argue all day long. I'd rather have one agent that gives me 10 buyers a month than 10 agents that give me one buyer a month each. So, the circle of cash flow is one of our patented technologies, and it's who do I know, who knows who I need to know. And in the world of mortgage origination and in the world of collaborative agent partnerships, I don't want to try to give as much value to as many people. I actually want to reverse that, and I want to give more value to fewer people. I am then in a demand-centric kind of mindset. If I'm giving more value to fewer people, more people will be attracted to what we have. But if I dilute that value, then I become more normal. I become just like some other originator. So I want to be cautious how we answer the question, but that would be the short story, Craig.
Great, thanks. Jim asks, what advice do you give a brand new agent in real estate, fresh out of licensing and ready to hit the streets? Is there one action that might trump all others?
Yeah, I think the one action that would trump all others is to get really clear on one objective, and that would be buyer number one. And so, the literal way to generate that is like, okay, you're brand new, you're just licensed. Who is in your circle of influence that does not know you're a realtor? And I would start there, and maybe it's 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, whatever the case may be. If they're in social circles, I would make it a big deal to announce to their social circle that they're now a real estate professional, and start that referability. And the big answer is that brand new real estate agent. If we do this collaborative thing the right way, this brand new real estate agent just needs the first buyer. They just need one, and as soon as they get the one, then we can start to put that collaboration into place. We can start to attack different social circles that those people represent. If I have a buyer that might be, a director at a church, or might be an administrator at a not-for-profit, or might be this, or might be that, then what the lender's going to do is come alongside that agent and that buyer and begin to generate more business out of that first buyer. So that would be the easy way to kind of get it going. Social gets us far more attention locally than door knocking and open houses and things like that. Making sure their center of influence knows that they are an agent, and driving it that way. Having a free real estate review, even if somebody's not ready to buy or sell, would be a great way for a brand new agent to sit down and add some value to people by, kind of looking at where they are, where they want to go. Big movements right now in rental pools, renters becoming first-time home buyers. So there could be some, local attack there on rental lists and things like that. But at the end of the day, the collaborative relationship of the future would need this agent to get one buyer. And then what I can do is I can come alongside them use that buyer as the impetus then to create more and more referrals back. And then, within a year or two, they're off to the races in a pretty substantial way.
Perfect. I think we have time for maybe one more. Louis, I wanted to thank you for sharing your insights, comments, and thoughts. This helped me, and I hope helped everyone else get sharper. What does your perfect day look like?
So if we get back to the first question, the perfect day is about what your intention and what your purpose is. I think that a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they've got to time block all these activities, and there's something really special when you start to realize that if I become more intentional and more purposeful about what I do, then I don't have to have the pressure of trying to multitask and do all these different things at one point in time. So if I'm coaching a loan officer today, what I would coach the perfect day to look like is I would have a really deep morning routine. I would practice the art of deep mindfulness. Before anything goes live, I would take care of me. And I do that every morning around 5 a.m. I want to make sure I'm in my right mind. I want to make sure that I'm, oriented the right way to the day. I want to have my prayer time, meditation time, and then I follow that with a workout time. And I think people need to enter the day feeling good about themselves. And then what I would say is, during the first couple hours of the morning, I would do a routine and regimented follow-up. I would follow up with buyers. I would follow up with agents. I'd follow up with whoever, is in my kind of sphere. I've got, maybe there's 10 agents. And so I'm going to make, 2 or 3 calls a week. I may call all 10 agents on Fridays and ask a series of questions about how the week went and get them prepped for the weekend. I do that. I want to have 3 to 4 hours of buyer consultations. I want to meet with my team a couple times, maybe in the morning with a huddle, maybe in the afternoon with a huddle. I want to make sure I proactively, either they or I communicate out to everybody in a transaction where that transaction is, what are the milestones that maybe we're moving towards, and we want to prevent the phone from ringing on stuff that we can be proactive about. Team oversight. If you think about it, you think about the perfect day for an originator. What would happen if you had 3 or 4 consultations a day? What would happen if you met with one realtor a day and you cycled them through every day and just had a connection meeting? So, you have to decide that. And I think what's interesting is we are not paying attention as an industry to all the things that happen all day long that take us away from making money. We just think it's part of the job. We need to rethink that. My perfect days, as a guy that runs our company, is I meet with our sales team. 3 things that I do that are my intentional and purposeful stuff is I create content, and I either record and distribute or develop that content. I either speak that content live, or in calls, and I connect with decision makers. So there's 3 things during the day that I try to do. I try to influence a team. I try to make sure that I'm creating content for the future. And then I try to connect with the people that I think are going to be valued by that content. And then we just cycle through that. And so it gets down to, what are the things you're good at? What are the things that generate the most revenue for you? And how do you get to a point where you do that most of the day? And I would also say this, time blocking is a really great idea, but it's even better to block what interrupts the schedule. To block it so you can do what you're supposed to do and then come back to it. We could go all day on that. That'd be fun.
I like it. Thank you. Well, we're right up against the top of the hour, and Todd, you and I haven't had a chance to yeah, no kidding, how time flies. You and I haven't had the chance to work together like you have with the rest of the panelists here, but I certainly followed your path, your career, been a big part of following you and helping in my sales career when I was originating back in the day, way back in the day. And I know you've always had some great gatherings and conferences and bringing in good, successful people, getting people motivated. And I know you have one coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I think you have a special something for us for everybody on the call here today.
Yeah. So just everybody write down salesmastery.com/Ameri, AMERI. Okay, so that is your special landing page. This is our 27th Sales Mastery event. It's going to take place in San Diego, October 14th. We have 2 special pricing offers, but before I even tell you about that, the theme this year is Fit, Fast, and Forward. And the beauty of Fit, Fast, and Forward is all of us need to protect our future, which is forward. All of us try to go too fast to get to the future, which is where the mistakes are made. And part of why we make the mistakes is because we're not fit. We're not fit emotionally, and economically. We're not fit in terms of strategy and thinking and whatnot. And so Fit, Fast, Forward is going to be the theme for this year. We've got 21 panelists, each one of whom is designed to share an idea that will generate an extra $100,000 in income per year for you. We have the #1 managing director from Morgan Stanley, who's going to be at Mastery talking about the future of mortgage industry finance. Her name is Carla Harris. We're going to be doing a lot of very, very cool panels on what does technology look like going forward? What does the future look like going forward? Always a great event. It's our 27th year doing this. So if you want to hit the next slide, the special pricing that we have for you guys is we have a $280 off extended special price for the premier ticket that gets you all the access to the events, to the happy hours, to all the content. And, we think about, what does this look like for an ROI? And my goal, as a guy that runs this and in terms of human value that I want to create for you is I want you to be able to walk away from Sales Mastery and really be in a position to have the life of your dreams going forward. I mean, really, what does that look like? And the business ROI, we want to generate somewhere around 5 or 6x on that $720. The Platinum ticket gives you all of that, but it also gives you all the video files and the digital files, and we give you $420 off of that. We also are doing something this year. If you want to bring your non-producing team members and realtor partners, there's a 50% off discount. So we can actually have agents and people from your team come at $450 or $550. They just can't be the originator. They can be on the originator's team, or they can be a realtor partner. So that's kind of the deal there. You'll again see the code down at the bottom, salesmasteryevent.com/Ameri. And also the next slide is your high trust advisor. His name is Jonathan Ho, and the next slide has his direct phone number, 949-398-0026. But I think Doug and Ron and Mark and Dave, we can, along with Craig's help, we can rally, a block of tickets or group pricing on this as we go forward. But Craig, thanks for letting me just talk about that briefly.
Well, I'll be I'm looking forward to it. As always, these are incredible events, and people that walk away from there I always track their production. They always went up about 1% within 3 months. It's amazing. They always get 1 to 2 away from that, and I see more than pays for itself, and it creates, like I said, 100,000 plus per year in their income.
And Todd, thanks for that gracious offer of the discount to our folks.
Yeah.
And we really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Thank you for the time today. I really enjoyed being with you guys.
I'll chime in, Todd. We thank you for that, but thank you for your from the heart today. I mean, the stuff that you shared today is so high value, and it's so proximate to what we're battling with and what we need to be reminded of. So God bless you, my friend. Thank you for that, and we wish you nothing but the very best as well.
Right back at you guys. Thank you so much.